Double Primer is back-to-back conversations with someone passionate about their work and passionate about someone else's work. Mostly art and mostly Atlanta. I'm your host, Sean Mills.
I've been Georgia's best and brightest 40 under 40. I've been in Black Enterprise, which is a national publication. I started it when I was in college. That's me as a founder. These are some of the things that I just mentioned. I forgot about Edutopia. You heard of George Lucas, the creator of Star Wars? Mm-hmm. So he has a national publication. It's called Edutopia.
Yeah.
So I featured
all that Star Wars money.
Yeah, exactly. So I featured in Edutopia. So there's an article about me and my nonprofit, and so it's a picture. I don't know if the picture comes up. Oh, the picture doesn't come up anymore. But this was in 2009. So at that time, I had a little small recording studio. So, but these are just kids that were in the program, and so just to kind of break it down to you, we did after-school programs in the area of the theater, performing arts, film and photography, music recording, and information technology. And what we did with information technology, we took old computers, broke them down and refurbished them, and put open source operating systems on them, and made sure that we provided people with low income housing projects and things of that nature. All of them got a computer, and once that was done, the kids were able to get a A+ certification. Cool. And that A+ certification came through a partnership that we had through Comcast. So I've been doing community stuff since '97 as a sophomore in college, and from '97 to 2000, I really took a very strong passion for community kids. So while I was from '97 to 2000, I worked therapeutic foster care, residential facility, psychiatric facility, group home setting, juvenile court setting. So everything I've done while I was in college, it was working in the capacity of kids. So I've worked in every profession that you can think of as it relates to kids. The only thing I didn't do was stuff with like mental retardation or something like that. But there have been cases where I provided services for people who were, slightly MR or, had autism or something like that, which my own child, my oldest son, is autistic. Yes.
Do you personally, if this is kind of like a yes or no question, mm-hmm. Did you personally have like the computer skills to set that stuff up, or did you kind of like oversee like other technicians?
I oversaw that process, but everything else I was kind of self-taught.
Okay.
So it was like
all the management, all the like.
Yeah, it was running the nonprofit side of it. I was in college. My major was mass communications and criminal justice with a minor in sociology. So with the concentration of video and audio. So I was in school for those purposes. So I initially wanted to be a radio personality, and so I took to that. Everybody says you had a great radio voice. So I kind of leaned towards what everybody was complimenting me on, as opposed to being passionate about it. And I actually liked it, but I just saw that a radio personality would have to have a certain personality all the time, and I was just like, I wanted to be liberated in a sense where I didn't want to pretend if I didn't feel that way that day. Mm-hmm. So I kind of turned my focus into, all right, so how can I take this degree and make use of it, because I got so far down the road with it. Mm-hmm. And with the video aspect of it, so being able to lock in on capturing moments, whether it's through videography or through photography, how do you capture moments, and the moments that you capture, how do you tell a story when doing that? And so attended Savannah State, the mass communications department at that time, worked on broadcast television. Anyway, it became apparent that what I was trying to find the passion about, and it was one of the things that I was up against was survival. So that's why I worked in different capacities as it pertains to kids, because I had my freshman year I lived on campus, my sophomore year I lived off campus. So when you live off campus, you kind of grow up a lot faster, because you got to pay bills, rent, and things of that sort. So that's basically what happened. And when that happened, I started kind of locking in on working smart and not hard. Sure. And so as an artist, for one, I'm an artist, so I came to school wanting to rap, poet, film and stuff like that, but what I realized my gift really was at art administration, meaning how do I create this program, how do I develop it, how do I learn the language, of bean counters as to how do we get this funding for this and so on and so forth. So I was able to master that. Not by myself. That picture of that pretty lady right there just next to me is my wife. And on that picture too, as you can notice, when it came to AWOL, the success of my AWOL program wouldn't have been possible if it wasn't for her. So, and I say that because it was truly a team effort, and I don't want to try to take the credit for something where I'll take the credit for creating it, coming up with the name, mission statement, and all those things, but my wife is a lot more detail oriented than I am. So even during the process of building it, I've learned a lot from her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you did come up with the name. Absent without leave was the origin of the phrase, but for you, it's a walk of life.
Yeah.
All walks.
Have you ever heard of Goody Mob?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So Goody Mob had an album. Their first album was called Soul Food. I think that's the name of it. Yeah, the first album. And the second album was called Still Standing. So when I came to school, I'm originally from Washington, D.C., by way of Columbia, South Carolina. An older brother of mine was killed in D.C., like a block away from where I grew up, from my house. And my mother is from Columbia, South Carolina, so I finished school there. And while I was there, of course, I was a product of, my mom had 6 of us, 4 different baby dads. So I was a product of, getting put out of schools, not coming up with great study habits, developing these little issues because I was moved around a lot. So what ended up happening was I was in Columbia, and my best friend that I grew up with in Columbia was basically, he was doing the right thing in school. I was too, but I had to finish an alternative school. I was just off the chain, got into a lot of fights and a lot of mischief stuff as a teenager. By the time I got ready to go to college, I left an alternative school to come to college. And I had light bulb moments. I had several light bulb moments. We were trying to come up with names for AWOL. And Ren, the tall guy you met, we were in my apartment, and at that point we were trying to come up with names for AWOL. And I came up with AWOL, All Walks of Life Incorporated, because I wrote a letter to Goody Mob. And the reason why I wrote a letter to him, because being from D.C. at that time, during the era that I came up with hip hop, the northern New York area had a very strong hold on it. All of the really great artists at that time, from LL Cool J to the Fugees to Black Sheep to De La Soul to Wu-Tang, all these great artists at that period was from that era. So when I came south, the only thing that I was relating to the South was at the time was Luke Skywalker, and his music was very provocative, and and during that era, I listened to it, but I wasn't a fan of it because I didn't understand it. And so it was just like, actually, I lacked cultural competence from a standpoint that I wasn't from Miami. So anybody from Florida or Miami, they got Luke. I didn't get it, I didn't grow up around that.
For sure.
But over time, I, gained respect for it. So I wrote a letter to them just stating how inspired I was, and I let them know that I was one-sided in my thinking in terms of hip-hop music. And when I heard the content for Still Standing and Soul Food, it changed my perspective on the South. So, and it was real, because I would not give anything from the South listen, because I felt like the base was New York. Everything came out of there. If it wasn't from there, then it wasn't pure lyricism and stuff like that. And so, and even at that point, I didn't understand the growth and the evolution of hip hop and what was happening in the culture. And so I'll gladly admit to those things because I just didn't have the maturity at the time.
That's an awesome coincidence, because our last 3 guests have all expressed initial kind of skepticism of the South, and then they ended up feeling like, it's way different and way worse than I thought.
No, absolutely.
And also just to kind of rotate off of how everything's connected. I don't know if you're familiar with this artist, DJ Spooky, but so when I was in school, another visual artist.
Spooky?
Yeah.
I heard of him.
Yeah, so
sorry to cut you off.
when I was in Athens, which is a great music town, we actually, me and my this other artist, Eddie Whalen, we drove to Savannah just to see DJ Spooky give a talk.
Wow.
And then like years later, he's the person who introduced me to the concept of dazzle camouflage, which is why I now put on this piano like 10 years later.
Oh, okay.
But then also too, like, so as I'm understanding it now, like you built something in college, and now you're going to try to take it to the next level in ATL.
Yeah. When you run a nonprofit, or when you run anything, especially in the arena of art, I think the most important element of it is partnerships.
For sure.
And partnerships that are really, that hold a lot of value. You know, in the world, when I say partnership versus someone else, I believe that if I give 110, you know, the other partner should give 110 as well too. The other thing about partnership is being a great example for the ones coming after us. We in my opinion, there seems to be a little bit of lackluster for how to do things in order. You know what I mean? And especially, it's like, you know, we could be caught up as artists sometimes in our own little world and thinking, until I think it's wrong to turn a blind eye that everybody don't think like us. And so you have to leave room for that side, the other side of the brain to work. So that's kind of like what separates me in my artistry. Over time, I'm a freelance photographer. I carry a Canon Mark D3. I shoot film and I do photography. But I found myself leaning more towards the art administrative side, because I feel as though art has been a crusader for change coming about, and it has been a vehicle for people from all walks of life, no pun intended.
Sure.
But it's one of them things where, in order for it to continue to have that mountain of emotion and feeling that I just kind of described in, you know, in a metaphoric way, you have to have people who are kind of like the worker bees, who are standing up for it from an admin standpoint.
For sure.
That way you kind of create a longevity piece to it. So, because some artists are just artists, and some artists don't know how to do artistry and protect themselves at the same time. So, you know, over time, in running my nonprofit and moving to Atlanta, and then having the idea of running the program in the community of Atlanta, that was what I wanted to do. You know, I dreamed about doing nonprofit service, art-oriented programming in the city of Atlanta, and I dreamed about doing it for the rest of my life. And so when I saw some of those realities not actually occurring at the time or the pace that I needed them to, it was more about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and that is food, water, and shelter. I'm responsible for my wife, I'm responsible for my kids, so I had to get a job and be a provider for my family. And that was the first priority. Then once I got on the jobs, I said, okay, I'm not going to frown in God's face, because I can take care of myself and my family. Now I am going to try to get into the arena of, you know, what I was blessed with, and that is art and service and community and things of that sort. So I landed a great opportunity here in July of 2016 as the Art Center manager here at South Fulton Art Center for Fulton County Government, and it's been different compared to, you know, working for myself. When I worked for myself, there was a partnership with the board, because I was the founder of AWOL. Mm-hmm. It's one of the things I view it as a partnership, because I drove the vision. Mm-hmm. You know, I went out and established these partnerships and these relationships. So I have a philosophy: if I'm doing the 3 G's, which is giving, and I'm getting people to come on board to give, or I'll tell people to get out of the way or get off the board, because if they're not contributing to advancing the mission of what I'm trying to do, then I'm real clear that they don't need to be around me.
Yeah, there are boards and there are boards. Some are really passive, some are like really engaged.
Yeah.
And I had another thing that was similar in terms of like supernatural math, because you were saying like you want you and your partner to do 110%.
Absolutely.
The way I think of it is like if we come together, we don't split the work.
No.
We want to say it's 2 + 2 = 5.
That's right.
We don't just make 4, but there should be an extra that comes out of it.
Absolutely. I totally 100% agree with that. I mean, it's the same concept. It's work that creates beautiful situations. You know what I mean? It's like, it's almost like you didn't intend for it, that serendipitous. You didn't intend for it to happen. Then all of a sudden this beautiful thing occurred out of it. So, yeah. So, I mean, I am in a paradigm shift. And what I mean by that is, you know, working for a government entity, which allows me to be in my passion, Mm-hmm. It's structurally a little different, because I am beholden to the taxpayers of Fulton County, meaning my department's funding is coming from taxpayers. So, then now I'm governed by what the mission statement is, and for the most part, it is to make sure that the residents of Fulton County has access to high quality art. So it doesn't mean that I'm straying away from what I'm doing with the nonprofit, but I'm in a situation where I have to keep them separate. You know what I mean? Because because I work here and I have to commit my time here, and I'm not going to shortchange being here and what I could do here. I realized that I would never shortchange it because it's limitations on what I could do. So whenever I'm not on county time, it's no limit of what I can do.
Right.
And so it's one of them things where, like, I have the best of both worlds. You know what I mean? Like, even if I don't get a chance to do something that I think would be beneficial for the center, especially the constituents, I can do it on the other end with the nonprofit. And so I think the last time we've been talking, I told you that I reestablished a nonprofit. So meaning, it was dormant for like 3.5 years. Mm-hmm. We didn't file taxes. I filed the last 3-year taxes. We got an office location, bank account, and I just spoke with a funder last week. Matter of fact, I was supposed to be meeting with her before this month is out.
Okay.
Yeah. So we're actually on the up and up, but I am open to entities that are already doing similar ideas or things that I've done before. I'm definitely interested in partnering because if I don't have to reinvent the wheel or kind of struggle with how to create or develop the program, then I'm all for it.
Better,
yeah, you know what I'm saying? So I'm open to all those things.
And one logistical thing I've just noticed in a similar kind of idea was that one thing that does shift, even if it doesn't go away, is the idea when you were a nonprofit on your own, you can stay up to 3 o'clock one night working on stuff. But when you've got a government job and you've got to be there at 8 a.m. the next day and you're trying to service children, you can't do that. You got to you have to even take care of your own sleep schedule.
Yeah, you do.
So there's that's another just personal paradigm shift.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's a hard thing, but at the same time, it's still a blessing because Fulton County is the only county in the state of Georgia that has 5 art centers. And Fulton County is 5 art centers is unheard of.
Right.
You're not going to go to too many places in the country where they have 5 art centers that's there to provide services for a community.
Right.
So number one, I think Fulton County is doing a great thing. It's almost like a turtle runs a race. And they're probably finished, but it's going to just be steady and slow. And that's kind of like what I realized is here in this seat.
Right.
It's steady and it's slow. The steadiness does provide a little bit of consistency and foundation, but being that it's slow, sometimes you miss out on opportunities that can kind of take to the next level. And that's the only thing. So it's really not a frustrating thing for me. It's just, okay, well, I can do it on my off time. I can do it with my nonprofit.
Right, and I can do you one better on 5 because although the city of Atlanta is something, and there's actual Fulton is something on a map, there is an overlap with Cobb County and Atlanta. What is considered Atlanta keeps spreading. So right next to the Fulton Art Center, but 4 miles away, there's the Art Place, and not 5 miles away from there, there's a place called the Sulmo Art and Cultural Center, and from 5 miles from that, there's the Art Station. And so even if you're an actual resident, you go to both of them. If you're in Atlanta, you get to participate in even more than just those 5.
Yeah,
and as someone who's maybe not Atlanta born, there's this kind of interesting concept where Atlanta actually has an unprecedented opportunity for growth because most major cities, they're built on a waterway so that they could have those ports. Well, Atlanta has no mountains, no rivers next to it.
Absolutely.
So it's growing in every direction.
Absolutely.
So it's there's no real end in sight.
No, it isn't. It isn't. And what's more important is and when I told you the art administrator has to know things that it's like what was the structure you call that on the piano painting? You said spooky, DJ Spook.
DJ Spooky.
Yeah, DJ Spooky. You learned something. What was it?
Well, like the artist that brought me to DJ Spooky also brought me to this concept called dazzle camouflage.
Okay, dazzle
Yes.
camouflage.
Yeah.
So dazzle camouflage is something that you learn.
Yeah.
From that experience.
Right.
And so it's like, and I lost my train of thought. Because I wanted to show the connectivity, and once you took a concept, you were exposed to a concept, and then you brought it back, and then you put it on the piano. And me and Ren's reaction was like, "Yo, that's dope." So basically, what I'm trying to do is make the correlation with pretty much how I view being able to see where I could grow what I'm doing here and grow what I'm doing on the nonprofit side. Now, the reason why I'm kind of mentioning those two different things, but this is the source of what I mean. So you said you learned something from that, right?
Right.
What I'm telling you is when I was doing AWOL, although those were programs, they were project-based learning.
Sure.
So, if the kids came in, they came together, they finished together. So if it's theater, they learn the technical aspects of theater, and then they work together to complete a project. So in this case, the project will be a play about Romeo and Juliet. So if I am targeting a demographic of kids who are underserved, which in some places, they could be the Hispanic population, it could be the Asian population. But in Savannah, it was the African American population. So we did a hip hop version of Romeo and Juliet. And it was so well received, we had 2,500 kids come and see the performance.
Oh, wow.
But now, what I'm saying is you learned a new skill set, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what I learned was if I did the curriculum while I am writing the script, and I based the curriculum on the standards, the Georgia Performance Standards, now I can approach schools about coming to the show because I took pieces of their own language on the curriculum statewide, and I incorporated it into our curriculum and our script as it relates to Romeo and Juliet and Shakespeare.
Sure.
So that's a unique skill that I've learned over time that I feel like as an art administrator is helpful for an artist.
Right.
The other unique thing is in the state of Georgia, the creative economy generates $62.5 billion annually. That is the creative economy. That means that it generates more revenue than sports in the state of Georgia. We have the Falcons, we have the Braves, we have we have the Hawks. The arts creative economy generates more revenue than those. So when I think about that, when I was talking about the project-based learning and the different programs that we was doing within the nonprofit, so now I started saying instead of it being an after-school program, it is a program that typically takes place after school, but it's all project-based learning. And so once they go through this series of curriculum instructions and things of that sort, and they work on putting that project together, in the midst of doing that, and that typically lasts about 6 to 8 months, I've gone out to establish a relationship with a professional company. So if we're doing theater, that company is going to be a what company? It's going to be a theater company. So if it's film that I'm doing, I'm going out to establish a relationship with a film company. So a lot of times what I would do is take the conversations with those entities of the disciplines that we're doing in the program, and I will find out what was their bottom line, meaning what was their bottom line and what was their high turnover rate where it was hard to keep people employed and so on and so forth. And they would say, oh, in this, we would have people and this is hard to keep somebody here doing that. I was like, well, what is the skill set that they need to learn? So they would partner with us on helping us develop the skill sets. And then we will make sure through pre and post testing that those kids are exercising those skill sets. So when they finish the program, now I'm asking that partner, can my kid get a job? So the ultimate, the reason why I'm saying when you learn that new skill set, what I learned was it was bigger than just the programming, the taking the language from the state of Georgia, so on and so forth. It's tied to money. So if $62.5 billion is coming to the state of Georgia, how do we align ourselves as a nonprofit with the creative economy? So that's one avenue. That's what I'm thinking that for AWOL. But then it's a lot easier to do it on the Fulton County side because we are an art we're an art agency.
Right.
And so if there's $62.5 billion, we have 42,000 square feet of space. There's the film industry is big, the music industry is big, the gaming community is big, coding, all these things with digital entertainment and technology, that's a part of the creative economy. So what I envision long term is creating programs at the art center that's in line with the creative economy. So when people come here, whether it's a young person or an older person, two things can happen. They either want to pursue it on the workforce, they want to pursue it and join that industry, or they want to pursue it on the collegiate level. And once they decide to pursue it on the collegiate level, now we have more people, more young artists who are deciding to go into a discipline that is making a significant amount of money. So to bring it back full circle, that skill set that you learned, the skill set that I learned was how to tie in what I love doing as a passion, but tie it to a workforce industry, and then show the value in that industry. You know what I mean? And so show the value in film, show the value in music, and so on and so forth. And so that's kind of like what I was able to do here with AWOL, but that's something that I could envision doing here. The only thing is that we have to spend the money to become a digital technology-based art center that not only offers pottery, dance, because a lot of the stuff that we offer don't require a lot of technical equipment. But if we have the technical equipment, then we can offer those services. You're a graphic designer, right?
Right.
So I can hire you to teach graphic design.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying?
Right.
So if you're a filmmaker, I can hire you to teach film. That type of thing. So it's just one of them things where we should have a nurturing environment that perpetuates the industry and said, yeah, we want to nurture our young artists.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so that's what I was able to do with AWOL in Savannah for artists who just didn't have no place to go or didn't have access to what we had access to. And that's what I'm trying to do as an art center manager, is to say, we have the space, now we need the funding to purchase the things so we can start getting ourselves in line.
So you've had previous success, you have a plan for the future. You were very practical too in your thinking of how you could problem solve, where it's like, what does the industry need? That's what I can kind of try to enrich and teach.
Yep.
I'm wondering, the only other thing that I'm kind of curious about at this moment is, what are your immediate needs? Like if a listener listened to this and they were like saying like, I'm going to help him tomorrow, what would be the number one or like a few things that are kind of the things that you're like looking for the next step?
Okay, so when you was coming in, you see me talking to someone, right? That question that they asked me was, because I was just walking them out, just thanking them for fixing something or whatever.
Sure.
And they've been here 18 years with the county, so they've seen people come and go.
Yeah.
So I'm just talking to them, and then the lady had said, she asked me about this. She said, I saw that stuff on the thing, because I said, when I first met you, you told me about a nonprofit you started. So what happened with that? So that's what she asked me today.
Yeah.
What happened? I just said, I just put it on the back burner. And she was basically probing me. She's like, what do you mean put it on the back burner?
Yeah.
So I had to explain to her the certain things had to be in place. And then I had to go to that store, like I got to take care of my family. As soon as I got up here, I wanted to do the nonprofit, but that would have required me having a contract and money already in place for services. And it just didn't work out.
You've been laying the foundation.
Yeah, so it took me from the time I got up here until this year to lay the foundation to say, okay, now it's completely separate. So what she said, what will help and work for us long time, for anybody that's listening to this. I'm going to tell you a story. And the reason why I'm going to tell you this story, because I don't believe in reinventing the wheel. I think I am a genius at acknowledging something that works. I will not try to recreate it. If it works, I will try to do the exact same thing.
Sure.
So I'm not quite Kanye, where I think I am a genius. I think it's genius in me to recognize something that worked. So there's a story about a guy named Hershey V. Jenkins. And after this interview, we're going to look him up and I'll show you. Okay. So he's in Savannah, and he's an older white guy, and he died years ago. Anyway, he donated a significant amount of money to United Way. It's like $500,000. When he donated it to him, somehow over time, things got lost, misplaced. At some point, blacks can go to school at a certain town, can drink out of. It was like over that period of time, all of that stuff happened, and he was pretty wealthy. We talking 30s, 40s. This guy donates $500,000. Yeah, but he misplaced it. Oh. So years later, they find it. I think it might have been in the late 80s or early 90s. They find it.
Like physical, the physical.
They
cash?
find the paperwork.
Oh, the paperwork
pertaining to the donation.
Yeah. Wow.
So if it's almost 40 to 50 years old, so how much interest has occurred over those years for that $500,000?
A lot.
A lot. So United Way of the Coastal Empire in Savannah, they have full-time employees, and they're paid through this interest that he made the donation from years ago.
Wow.
So when they're doing a campaign for people to donate to United Way, that's 100% money that's going back to the community for services.
Sure.
So when you ask me what somebody could do, they can do exactly that. And the reason why I say that is because Hershey V. Jenkins, he was here, I don't know, 75, 80 years ago before I was even born.
Mm.
But I'm talking about him.
Yeah.
So the true testament of what anybody can do is help somebody become, they'll help me for a year or 6 months, so a year. We're talking about a lifetime. So to truly help someone is to put them in a position where they can help people for a lifetime, even when you're not here. Because if the structure is there, you know what I mean, then everything else will work itself out. You'll have another creative Tony Jordan. You'll have another creative Sean. You know what I mean? You'll have someone who will come in and kind of take our level of thinking to a whole nother level. But in order for them to kind of operate in that type of creative space, the structure the foundation should already be set. So anybody listening, now you can't donate on the county side because that's Fulton County. But if it's a nonprofit, it don't necessarily got to be AWOL. But any nonprofit, how you can help them sustain is create a plan that helps them over a period of time. Mm-hmm. And it should be outliving them as a lifetime. You know what I mean? He invested $500,000. He's nowhere around, and that $500,000 incurred so much interest until it's still around.
Yeah.
Tell me that is not the ultimate way of helping someone.
That's just like the best example of God don't make no mistakes, that phrase.
Exactly.
It's like you would think that this is a disaster and end up becoming a bonus.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So, so that's what I meant about the Kanye West statement. That is genius to me, and during that time period, I don't know whether he was a racist. It doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. Anytime I know he's in heaven, I'm going to tell you why. Because he did something that helped people. And United Way help people from all walks of life.
Sure.
So it doesn't matter, whether I know his origins, what he's connected to, or anything. Mm-hmm. I respect him a great deal because he was doing something that had nothing to do with him. But he probably, and I don't know how much money he had or died with or whatever, but he had the foresight to see, if I make this investment into the United Way, and everybody knows the premise of United Way and what they're supposed to do. Mm-hmm. So there's no way in the world he could have been that type of person.
Sure.
So he had it all figured out. So to help me, somebody listening, is not that's one way. The other way is, and I'm gonna make this extremely short. There was a friend of mine. His name is Murray Wilson. He's British. Mm-hmm. He's an awesome guy. I drive a Mini Cooper because of Murray right now. And I met him one day when I was giving a tour. I was working in AWOL, and I was giving a tour of people, of potential funders or donors or people who wanted to sit on the board to see what we were doing. And after the tour, he came to me. He said, if I gave you $1,000, he said, I know it'd probably go towards purchasing more equipment or a bill or something like that. And I was like, in my head, I was thinking yeah, he's right. But he said something that was so important. Guess what he said?
What did he say?
He said, if I gave you my time, that would be way more important and invaluable. It was. The fact that he gave me his time afforded us about $250,000. And that's just that's the value of the program when we first started it. That was the computer program. He was an IT guy. So he basically, he came in with the technical aspects of how to break a computer down and build it back together and so on and so forth. He built a village with a satellite and computer labs in Africa, certain African countries and stuff like that. So he was off the chain artist guy, but he was like, if we did something like that here, that would be great. So why not teach the kids how to fish as opposed to do the fishing for them?
Right. And right now in this time of paranoia, there's this phrase: if you see something, say something. And then there's that kind of like reverse of that to say, if you know something, do something with it.
Absolutely.
And you've been very gracious to say that even if it's not with you, people should support a nonprofit. But I'm gonna set you up anyway and say, where can they find AWOL online? How can they?
Oh, it's the
get in
website
contact
is
with you?
the AWOL is AWOLINC.org, AWOLinc.org, and AWOL stands for All Walks of Life Inc. We have several YouTube videos. You can check out the YouTube videos by put in one word, help AWOL. And we have several Vimeo videos. So we have a television show. If you go on the website, it's called The Chop Shop. When we were in Savannah, although we had a film component program, the unique thing is that we ran a 30-minute television show on the Comcast television station. So that all those different things that we were able to do kind of set up bigger things later on down the road. So yeah, anybody could give to AWOLinc.org.
Find more information at doubleprimary.com.